Welcome to part 2 of our interview with Rouypirom, founder of SATI Foundation. If you haven't heard part 1, do go back and listen to episode 15 on the podcast to get up to date. This is without doubt one of my favorite interviews so far on the podcast. In an environment where it's tough to get a break in life, Zach and his team do great and important work in providing more than just handouts. SATI provides opportunity for those in Bangkok, especially the city's youth that didn't get dealt great cards in life. And SATI give them the opportunity to learn, develop, and become strong and independent, which is everything this podcast stands for. If you have a business that would like to help people in Bangkok who haven't been offered much opportunity, do reach out to Zach's. You can contact him at his email address, which is in the show notes of the episode. Also, if you'd like to donate goods or just your time, then Zach's would really appreciate that, so do reach out. Enjoy today's interview, which is part 2 of our chat with Rouypirom of SATI Foundation. Welcome to the Build Your Base podcast. We are very happy today to welcome back Zach from Broccoli Revolution and SATI. If you haven't heard the first part of our interview, do go back to that episode. We talk all about Broccoli Revolution, the story, and how Base came to work with Broccoli. We did talk a little bit in the last episode about SATI, the charity that you started, and some of the other great work that you do at Broccoli. Just want to delve a little bit deeper into that today because you do so much good work for Bangkok and Thailand. It's definitely a message that I really want to help to get out. So first, tell us again, if anyone hasn't heard the first episode, what is SATI, what do you guys do, and just how that organization started?
I guess it's kind of been like a lifelong dream. I wanted to start a nonprofit, but I wasn't sure. When I was younger, I thought it was going to be like kind of maybe like a Doctors Without Borders. Maybe you go up in the mountains and you help kids. I actually grew up like working and volunteering for a lot of nonprofits. Like ever since high school, in high school I volunteered at a hospital, and I was a kid, so they had like these rolling Nintendos. So I was working in the HIV ward for young kids with HIV and AIDS. So I'd go from room to room and play video games with them, just like as a volunteer. I got to college, I volunteered at environment places, at-risk youths, New York Cares, like runaways. So I grew up in that environment. My family's very like socially involved. So it was instilled in me from a young age of like, hey, when you're when you're able to, you have to give back to society. I just didn't know when that would be, so I always thought maybe I'd work be like 60 or something and retire and have some money and start a nonprofit. But life changes. I came back.
You felt that calling.
Yeah, I came back to Thailand. I was still in school, and I came back. It was the year of the big floodings. I don't know if were you in Thailand? Yeah, it was pretty bad. It was, and I came back to be a monk actually. And after I left the temple, I couldn't get back to Bangkok. It was in the countryside, and because Bangkok was literally like flooded. And when I got back, I was volunteering, going out for the floods, and I had to go back to school. And I was like, you know what? I don't know when that day is going to come where I can, start that nonprofit, and I don't know how long that's going to take. Life changes, you get a job, you have a family. From one car it becomes 2 cars. From one house it becomes, it's like you're always going to have something else. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to come back now. I may not have like the money, but I have the dream, the passion. So after I finished school, I came back and I started like SATI, like super basic, just going up in the mountains. Mostly went up north, Chiang Rai. So SATI as a whole, we do healthcare and education for underserved and at-risk youths. So how I usually divide it up is underserved is mostly outside of Bangkok, so it's like the low-income families, like the farming families, the tribal schools. So these are a lot by the border. So we go to Mae Hong Son, Chiang Rai, Chiang Mai, Isan. We call it like preventive care. So water, sanitation, nutrition. We have tons of base volunteers. I mean, like Shah is like one of our super volunteers. Let's say Shah comes and she'll do like a mini base camp. What we try to instill in the kids is it's not just about exercising, but it's about like, one, you have options. Like you can be an athlete, or you can be a trainer, you can do many things. 2, it's just about building that sense of confidence and awareness in their body and their mind. And I think that's very important for kids because they get lost in the environment or in their phones. So we do
even in some of the poor neighborhoods.
In the poor neighborhoods, if it's outside of Bangkok, they don't have phones as much, but they're kind of enclosed where, I love farming. I think farming is a great thing, but sometimes kids they don't realize that they have other options. So it's like, hey, in Thai, เรียนหนังสือ means like learning how to read. So sometimes kids go to school like 6th grade, 10th grade, and they stop going to school because their parents are like, hey, you can read, now come and work on the farm. But which is nothing wrong with that, but we'd like to at least give them the options of, hey, you can do whatever you want. Hey, you want to be an astronaut? What does that entail? And then we have scholarship kids.
So kind of opening their minds.
Yeah. So the outside of the country is more of the preventive part, because these are the kids who are kind of at risk of possibly running away from home, getting into drugs. In Bangkok, we work with, it's called at-risk youth. So at-risk youth are kids who already have run away from home, like street kids, kids in drug abuse, drug-addicted kids, and kids in sex trafficking and prostitution. So these kids are, they're a little more difficult, a lot more difficult, but it's their environment. A lot of them have grown up in an environment where their parents are drug abusers, or they're surrounded by that. So it's the same thing. One, we run workshops also. But one is also to let them know they have options. Like your option is you can do other things besides selling drugs. You can do other things besides selling your body. If they were to work, a minimum wage job, let's say, at Mini Mart or 7-Eleven, they make 340 baht a day for like 10 hours. If they were to sell their body, they can make 1,000 baht for 15 minutes. So how do you say, hey, don't do that, go do that? I never go in and be like, hey, that's wrong. By counseling them, we say, okay, do you know what the danger is of you selling your body? Do you know what happens with unprotected sex? If you get HIV, what happens? So provide them with all the information to know what their dangers are. 2 is when they're ready to talk and they're like, do you actually want to be doing this? No, I want to do something else, but I don't know what to do in my life. That's where the workshops come in. We do everything from photography, art therapy. We do cooking classes. We do Muay Thai classes. We do dance classes. All with the same thing in mind. Like they all look different, but it all has the same goal. I look at it as in like tiers. So step 1, they're with us for 2 hours, let's say, from the other week. They're not out there selling themselves. They're not out there selling drugs. 2 is, are they having fun? Are they happy? 3 is, are they learning a skill? Maybe if it's photography, maybe they're learning about lighting and shadowing. 4 is maybe they get a job. Maybe they can work in a film crew. They can be a cameraman. 5 is they actually get an occupation. They can be a photographer one day. So it's like everything is tier-based, and it's about kind of each kid has a different level. So if they're drug addicted, then how do we draw them away? Because a lot of times kids are not actually addicted to drugs. A lot of the kids I met, they're actually just bored. It sounds weird, but they have nothing to do. All the other kids around them are getting drunk and getting high. So hey, that's what we do. So how do we pull that from that? Sports, activities, different things. So our egos are. I think people commonly misunderstand the meaning of the ego and the id. They say your ego is like, if someone has a big ego, it's like they're very like pompous. But often our ego is our reflection, So it reflects.
So to build up their ego a bit.
Yeah. When we growing up in our environment, it's like if we do a good job, we get a good grade. You go to school, you get an A. If you do a good job, your parents pat you on the back, like good job, here's a present. If you do a bad job, you get a bad grade. Your parents yell at you. We grow up in an organized society. So those positive and negative reinforcements actually builds our ego, our reflection. So everybody's like this and this. So some people are like this, some people are like this, some people are like this. But these kids are all like this on the bottom. They're on the bottom because they've never had anything positive. One boy I know, he has a tattoo that says "Kon Leo." It means like bad person, like trash. Like Leo is like really bad. He's 16 and he has that tattoo because he's never been given any value. So why wouldn't they sell their bodies? Because they don't see any value in that. But imagine like learning to do what Cha can do, or learning to jump really high. It sounds like very minimal, but it actually adds that little plus. And how do we get them not so they're super ego, but how do we get them just to be regular, balanced?
Do you find that when they do take a great photo or they do see progress in their lives, can you see the positive effect that has on them?
Why would we not sell our bodies? Because we think that it's our body, it has value. We had this one photo workshop, right? And we had each week the kids would learn a different skill, and then once they learn a different skill, we would have a photographer come in with a different skill, like portrait, landscape. One week we had like a fashion photographer come in to teach them, and instead of letting the kids be the photographers, I flipped the script and I let them be the models. And we had a bunch of Thai brands donate clothes. We had a makeup artist come in, Perry Pie. She's one of the base clients. She came in and she did makeup. And there was this moment where I walked into the room, and imagine being a kid, you're sitting there and you have someone doing your makeup, you have another person doing your hair, and you have 3 other people like on you. I saw their eyes light up. That's what like self-value. They're like, they felt really important once in their life. And that's the feeling we're trying to get as a SATI. Like how do we give kids that feeling that they never had, so they can be like, hey, I'm a human being. I don't need to do these bad things to myself. I can go work hard. I can do this. I can do that. You know, when you say, hey, oh, you look great, or you look strong, or hey, that's a really nice kick, they look at you like, are you lying? You know,
so they never had that before.
Because they've never had that positive reinforcement. We take that for granted. You know, how much positivity we have in our lives. Other than the healthcare and education is what I use as a wide umbrella for, like, that's a quick speech. Or what does they do? Healthcare and education. But the real core goals is two things: choices, giving kids choices, which they didn't have, and two is building their self-esteem so they can empowerment. So that's the core of SATI.
The SATI works very well with Broccoli in terms of Broccoli giving them opportunities to earn and to develop and to get this positive reinforcement. Do you think generally Bangkok and Thai businesses could do a better job with giving these people opportunities?
I think so. So one of the new programs that we were supposed to start this year, before, like, literally in March, and then COVID happened, is we were going to do training. We're going to work in detention centers, so youth detention centers. We're going to do workshops there. So the reason why I decided to go to youth detention centers is because a lot of the kids I work with, they've been detained, like they were in and out of jail, either for drug abuse or like burglary. So what happens when they come out is, and this is firsthand from them, I'll be like, okay, they'll go apply for jobs, and most people will not give them a job, and then, like, they just go back to that cycle. And they have no friends, so they have there's two options now. Either go back to your old friends who are causing trouble, or go back to your new friends which you met in jail. So either way, it's not a good direction. So this year I'm hoping to build more awareness about, like, you know, giving kids more jobs, giving them more chances. And two, we're going to go in and prepare them for when they come out. So it can just be like, you know, whether it's physical activity or we're learning to be a barista or learning to cook, to try to build that line of, hey, you know what, you know how to make coffee now. When you come out, we're going to have 5 coffee shops that are ready to accept you and train you. But the owner or the business owner needs to really understand the sensitivity of these kids. That's the hardest part. You know? It's not just about, hey, here's a job.
Right, well, hopefully some Bangkok business owners are listening to this and they can get involved in the scheme as well. We will leave details on how to contact you, Zach, in the show notes of the episode. Can you tell us about maybe some of the individual successes that you've had with SATI, like some of the kids you've worked with, some of the times they've really come through difficulties to get through to the other side?
So we have scholarship kids. So the goal of these kids is we send some of them to school. If you're a scholarship student, which we send to school, you have to volunteer when you have time off or when you're available. The goal is actually to build character, like teaching kids how to give back. So when these kids who've had difficult times, when they're able to get supported and they have go to school and do different things, when they go teach other kids and they see the kids that used to be in their position, it's like there's this sincerity that comes out that can't be taught. So like with our scholarship program, we want to build that mentality with the kids who had a hard time and they have a better life now. Our first scholarship student, she was with us since, I want to say Ma Song, it's like about 10th grade. She lives in like a slum area in Lat Pao, behind Wat Bung Thong Lines. Like there's a big slum area there. Her father's a motorcycle taxi, makes a couple $100 a day. Her mother does like handiwork. So she's been our scholarship student since 10th grade. This year she just graduated like this month, a couple months ago, even though from pharmacy school. So she's she just got her first job. Yeah, this last month she got her first job.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was actually planning on flying to. She went to school in Phayao to go to her diploma ceremony, but with COVID things are closed. But she's an amazing kid. She's working as a pharmacist now. And
how did you first get connected with her?
I was a monk. I was a monk twice, but the first time I was a monk, I still have. He's my monk, like my monk teacher. But he's an elder monk, and he teaches school, Buddhism at a school in the slums in Lat Pao. And I had this conversation with him way back. I was still in the U.S. The kids in these schools, in your school, what are they like? He's like, it's very difficult for them. They don't really have opportunities. The education system for their public school isn't great. So a lot of them don't get to go on and do things they want to. And I'm like, if you meet any kids in your class that you feel that need support, please let me know. So he introduced me to this young girl, and then SATI wasn't really up yet, so I was supporting her on my own. We have several students in different scenarios, but she was definitely one of our success stories, and I hope maybe she can be the CEO. She doesn't know this, but maybe she can be the CEO of SATI one day.
Okay,
yeah.
wow.
But SATI eventually wants to be. I want it to be for the kids. So these kids who grew up in the system are running. Most of the kids are doing pretty well. One of the students we have is from a rough area in Lampong. Her mother was in sex working, and I met her through one of our programs, and she was a really talented photographer, and then she went missing for a year. And she went missing just because they couldn't pay for their housing and had to kind of squat here and there. When we found her again, we brought her in as our scholarship student, and she's in high school now.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and she's still going to school. She works with us at my other place. I have a cafe. We also run a place called Not Cafe, a newer project. I've opened up about a little over a year, and we run that as a training center. So kids in SATI train to be baristas, train to be cooks, so she works there after school now. She's doing quite well. From a very reclusive girl who was didn't talk to people, now she's becoming a teenager and being more open and stuff. So
that's awesome. No, it's really great to hear, and it's really awesome work. And I really do hope that these kind of stories really serve as inspiration for other people in their community, right? And I think that's what can be so powerful about this. One thing that I feel Thailand is missing a little bit is there's a lack of rags to riches stories. Someone who really overcame adversity in a difficult life to really make it big, and I think that's something that America does so well. And I think the more of these success stories that we have, the more other kids hopefully will see it and say, hey, this is possible for me too. It's great to affect 5 or 10 people, and that's awesome, and that's 5 or 10 lives you change, but it can have a knock-on effect to others in their community as well.
It's important for these kids to understand that they can be contributing people to society. They can give back, but they have to be at that level where they're ready. So it's just about instilling in those kids, in the society, and being like, hey, it's not about giving away a lot of money or stuff. It's about just kind of building that positivity and a network of, hey, being conscious of the problems around us, and supporting each other,
Yeah, building that self-worth, as you said, which is obviously lacking in these communities, and just kind of building a life that you can be proud of. So
it's hard not to judge people, I feel like a lot of the kids I see, they're really, really rough lives, born into prostitution next door and drug. I know kids who are born into brothels. But that's their norm. Our norm. We can't use our norm to judge a person's norm because they didn't grow up like us. I grew up quite privileged. I admit that. My parents supported me. I got to go to any school I wanted to. I got to study in the U.S. I grew up with many options. They just always told me that, hey, when you have the ability, you got to realize that you can give back. They don't have options like we do. Selling drugs is what everybody else in their community does. So
it seemed like an easy option. I guess.
and it's not because they know. It's not about right or wrong. Right or wrong is only within the societal context. They don't. If everybody in your society is doing that, then does that make, even if it's illegal, does that mentally that you see that as being wrong? Judgment is a big thing we do in all societies, and I think it's important to kind of reduce that mentality of judging people. I think we see that going on in the world.
It's tough, right? Especially here in Thailand, I think, but anywhere in the world.
You see America and everything going around and riots. It all comes from judgment. Whether you're going to judge people by the color of the skin or the money they make, or it's all judging. You're just judging.
I think that's why podcasts like this are great. We can help to get the message out and educate people a little bit more, and just think about these things a little bit more. But no, really great to hear some of the successes of SATI. Tell us a bit more about how these communities have been affected in the last few months of COVID-19. Of course, COVID hasn't hit Thailand hard, but I'm sure the economic ramifications have still been there.
So when March happened, we had a bunch of SATI projects. The detention center, we're actually building a sustainable dorm in Mae Son with the villagers, and then COVID hits and everything is canceled. I couldn't get in the detention centers. We lost funding for the dorm. Everything was. Do we wait it out or and then obviously it was becoming an issue where we couldn't wait it out. So with SATI, I was trying to figure out what we're most comfortable with, and we're good at management, developing sustainable projects and kind of linking and building them on, linking with base and doing things. So I linked up with a couple of nonprofits and organizations I know. One is SOS, it's a food surplus nonprofit, and they do food distribution. So they'll have donors like hotels, 5-star hotels, supermarkets that donate food surplus, and they'll give to needy communities. And then there's another group called USL, Urban Studies Lab. They're like a think tank. They do community development and data collecting. SATI and the other two organizations got together and we developed a COVID relief plan. So for the last couple of months, 3 months, we've been running a COVID relief project where we would go into communities that were mapped out already. So they was given a score according to income, age, and density, and develop the most red areas in Bangkok. So we've been hitting. I've been you see, I'm super tan from not at the beach. I haven't been to the beach, but we've been out in communities, seeing what the problems are and donating relief packs. So now we're donating about 2,400 families per week. We've already donated over 30,000 families, I believe. I have to double check, but around there.
And so it's more looking at the economic devastation, right?
Yeah, because it's important to see the difference, because medically wise, people have to go to the doctor, they have to go to the hospital. That's something that the government is taking care of. But the economic standpoint, so there's so many people in Thailand who live off of like daily wages. What that means is like, if you're a noodle shop, you go buy your ingredients at the market. Then you go sell with that, and then that's your profit, and that's what you use to buy food for you or pay your rent. So there's so many daily wage owners who've been like hit. They don't have money to eat, which I didn't realize until actually going to the communities that it was that extreme. When people don't have money to eat, recently I went to unregistered community. They're a garbage collecting community. So they live in a garbage dump and they collect garbage and they sell it. Usually, they sell by pound, like coppers, like 100, like 40 baht, plastic. So they sell that, and then that's what they have to eat per day. Maybe they make 100 baht per day. Now even garbage they can't sell. So there's people who are just they're starving literally, and then there's so many people who, culturally wise, people don't save money that much in Thailand. First month, the most hardest hits were the richest and the poorest. Because the richest who are used to making billions, they're like, hey, from 10 billion you can see the difference to 9 billion to 8, and that's a big jump. And then you have the super poor who are living off their daily earnings, where all of a sudden they have no money for food. Because the first month the office workers weren't feeling it yet, because they're still getting their salaries, so people are still getting salaries. And then the second month you start to see like people who their salaries are getting cut. And then the third month people are losing their jobs. So you're seeing this big domino effect. Even though, okay, the country is opening up, people have less, health-wise people are better, but economically-wise we're still in a red area. So there's still people who need the support. So like the more places I go to, the more I'll see motorcycle taxis. So everywhere I go, I ask like, okay, so what is your, what percentage are you down? We were talking about this before. Like, what percentage is your business down? And the number I've been getting mostly is like 70 to 80%. So from making like 100 baht a day, they're making like 20 baht a day, 200 baht from 1,000 to
wow.
Yeah, people who usually make like 1,000, on average, they're making like 200.
And that has a knock-on effect to the community.
Yeah. So it's like boom, 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 people are,
And I think these are all of the workers that got laid off pretty much straight away, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of F&B workers are just like, come back in 3 months.
Yeah.
Anyone working in bars or
Yeah.
nightclubs.
And there's people, people have iPhones that they're like they're financing, they have apartments, they have cars, like that is a common thing with any society. So think about the debt, like, first month they give you the letter, second month, by third month you're getting stuff confiscated, it's a big thing with rent, and if you're living in like an apartment or a condo, so you can see like people are still very, very affected, and what we try to do with the relief is we try to help them, the poorest, and it's not much, but like for instance, canned fish and rice, 5 kg, that's like about what we have in a pack is about 30 meals for one individual. If it's a family of 4, it can last them about a week. So if they can save money on that, and then they can use their money for other things, or hopefully help reinject them to start. If their noodle shop isn't making a lot of money yet, maybe they have no customers the first couple of days. So yeah, it's been pretty rough for these communities, and hopefully hoping things will get a little better now that they're opening up more.
Hope so. COVID hasn't hit Thailand particularly hard, which is good news, but I think the economic fallout will continue for a while yet, I think, for sure. You mentioned there a couple of 5-star hotels that have been helping out with some of the efforts. Do you want to give any shout outs to any Bangkok businesses that have either been helping out financially perhaps, but also, like, importantly, I think, giving those opportunities for some of these kids to sort of get a normal life?
Besides base, pretty much, so Shah, Brand, like so many of the staff, Jonah, so with the COVID project, right, there's a lot of manual labor involved. I mean, we're delivering 2,400 relief packs a week. That's, each pack has 5 kgs of rice. So that's like tons of rice. So we had this, they come in and they're lifting, so we have so many different volunteers. So we run our donation base through, it's something called Social Giver. Social Giver is a platform, a donation platform. It's like a crowdfunding, and they do services. So they're a really, really good partner because transparency is really important to me. So in our program, it's like, hey, people want to donate, they want to help. Where's that money going to? So by having Social Giver as our platform, they audit. So people can know, like, hey, every penny is going to help the kids or the families. So I mean, there's almost too many people to list. Because I'm afraid to say the companies, because then I know I'm going to forget. Yeah. But I mean, like, you guys all know who you are, because the reason why SATI in a lot of the programs we've done and been able to be around for this long and to be able to grow is we have so many good supporters. Like last year we did a campaign with AP, Condo. Like we have all these really really good companies that come in, and I have to admit I'm a bit difficult when a company comes to us because I'm not big into like CSR, like CSR as the image. If a company wants to come and be like, hey, let's come and take pictures, like, you know what I mean? I'm really, really against that. I'm sorry, but I don't like.
There has to be some substance.
Yeah, substance with. So the first thing when a company comes to me, I'm like, hey, what are your skill sets? It doesn't have to be money. Of course, we need money, but it's like, let's say we're building a dorm in Mount Son. Let's say they're a construction company. Hey, can you donate your construction staff? You know what I mean? Like, because eventually we have to pay for that anyways. So these people
are they very receptive to that? Companies that you speak to, they're quite happy to help.
Yeah. So most companies, if they come to approach us, I think a lot of them know what we're about.
That's good.
So we've been very lucky to have a lot of synergy. And then the ones who don't know, then they just don't come, or the ones that I don't think they probably would care, I probably wouldn't approach.
They're just looking for a photo of.
Yeah, which ends up being more tiring than anything, because then you take your babysitting.
That doesn't really help anyone.
Yeah, and you're babysitting, and something that's very important is as a nonprofit, it's very important to empower kids. If you go to a village, there's villages in Thailand who like nonprofit after nonprofit is going to give them stuff. You're growing up and thinking that you're poor. You're growing up and thinking that you need a handout. The person handing out stuff is you're developing a child who doesn't think they have any value. We don't support that. Like, we don't go, hey, let's get a bunch of blankets together, skits together, and let's give it to all these poor kids who have no blankets. Everything has to be with a lesson. It has to be with a workshop. It has to be with synergy. If we do a water project, I'll ask the principal, where do you normally get money? Water. They're like, okay, we buy water. Okay, how much water do you buy per day? Okay, how much buy we? Okay, we spend 30,000 baht a year to buy bottled water. I'm like, if we develop a water system for you, you won't have to buy water anymore. That 30,000 baht, what are you going to do with it? If they can't answer that question to me, we don't do it. That's how you develop corruption too. Because that money, all of a sudden, there's that 30,000 baht. It's just laying there. And then he may have not taken it in the past, but now, maybe he's in debt and this and that. And all of a sudden, you think you're doing something good, but you're actually developing a system of people like being corrupt, developing kids being not empowering the kids. So when these companies come, it's important for them to know that, hey, we're not going there to act like we're better than them. We're going there to tell them we're all human beings. Hey, I'm going to help you with some water, but you the teachers, you the principal, you the kids, you have to study, and you have to work hard so you can be whoever you want to be. So I think that's lost in the big picture a lot of times.
I think it's definitely an important message, and I think it's also good that people know where their money is going. It's not enough to just donate to a cause or a charity and just feel good about it, but to know that that charity is being transparent with how they're investing it, how they're building, these kids in these communities up. So that's really great. Thank you, Zat, so much for sharing your story on SATI and everything that you do. If a business owner is listening or anyone's listening and wants to help out, what's the best way to reach out?
I think so. We have social media. We have Instagram, SATI Found, SATIFOUND. We have Facebook, so SATI Nonprofit. You can email me, sakson@sati.or.th. So those are probably the three main ones.
Cool. We'll leave all of that in the show notes. And just before we sign off, what does SATI mean or stand for?
Okay. SATI is it's an old Buddhist Pali word. It means mindfulness. The big goal is to just be mindful of not just the solution, but also the problems of people around you. So we try to develop that mind state in everything you do, and I think that'll allow you to do more positive things if you're mindful.
Okay, that's great. A great note to sign off on. Thanks very much for joining us, Zach.
Thanks, Jack.